Hello everyone. Welcome to Azad Revenge Stories channel. I still remember the exact shade of pink frosting on that cake. Congratulations, Clara, written in this Luby cursive font that probably took the bakery an extra hour to perfect. Everyone was gathered around the conference table, champagne flutes filled to the brim, faces flushed with excitement, and there I was standing in the corner holding a plastic cup of cheap sparkling wine that tasted like metal and disappointment. To Clara, Julian announced, raising his glass, "Our newest director of product development." 7 candidates interviewed. But experience matters more than loyalty in this business. He looked directly at me when he said that last part. 7 years with us isn't the same as 15 years of industry expertise. Everyone clinked glasses. Someone patted my shoulder sympathetically. The entire marketing department, IT staff, even the receptionists, they all knew that promotion was supposed to be mine. I'd been promised as much in my last 3 performance reviews. Clara caught my eye across the room. She mouthed, "Sorry," while simultaneously accepting a hug from Imagine from HR. That fake apology was somehow worse than if she just ignored me. "Toast, Maeve," Julian called out, his voice carrying that subtle challenge. Surely our dedicated senior manager wants to congratulate our newest director. 42 pairs of eyes turned to me. I felt my cheeks burn, but I lifted my plastic cup and forced the corners of my mouth upward. To Clara, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "Congratulations on your success." I raised my glass higher, made eye contact with every executive at that table, and added, "I look forward to working closely with you all in the coming months." None of them knew what I'd been building for the past 4 years. Not a single person in that room had any idea. I'm Maeve Donner, 32, and until 3 months ago, I was the most loyal employee that mid-sized tech analytics company had ever seen. 7 years of 60-hour weeks, canceled vacations, and solving problems no one else could figure out. 7 years of being the first to arrive and last to leave. Sorry, I need to take a breath. Talking about this still makes my hands shake. Actually, before I go deep into this, if you're really interested in knowing what happened next, could you please give this video a like? Also, subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon to get notified when we upload new videos like these. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from, because trust me, what I'm about to share might just save some of you from making the same mistakes I did. So anyway, where was I? Right. 7 years at this company that specialized in marketing analytics software. I was hired right out of grad school. I had this fancy master's degree in data science, but practically zero real-world experience. Julian, he was just a department head back then, took a chance on me. At least that's what he reminded me of every time he needed someone to work through a holiday weekend. "Remember when no one else would hire you, Maeve?" He'd say it like he was joking, but we both knew he wasn't. For years, I was grateful, so pathetically grateful. I built my entire identity around being the company problem solver, the reliable one, the one who never said no. The first time I was passed over for promotion was 4 years ago. I'd been there for 3 years at that point, and the assistant director position opened up when Tyrell Mercer left for a competitor. Julian brought in someone from outside, a guy named Preston with fresh perspective, whatever that means. "Next time, Maeve," Julian promised, squeezing my shoulder. "You're just not quite ready yet." I believed him. That's the thing that makes me angriest now. I actually believed him. That night, I went home and cried until my eyes were swollen. Then I opened my laptop and started working on a side project. Just a little something to keep my mind occupied. I had this idea about a more efficient algorithm for predicting consumer behavior patterns. Nothing revolutionary, just something to focus on besides my disappointment. But then Preston quit after 8 months. Another opportunity came up and went to another external hire named Jocelyn. More leadership experience was the explanation that time. By year 5, I'd been passed over 3 times, but my little side project had grown into something substantial. I'd built a predictive analytics engine that made our company's primary software look like a child's toy. I kept it to myself, working on it after hours, refining it, testing it with dummy data I'd created. I called it Aura Adaptive User Response Algorithm. Cheesy name, I know. But it was mine, all mine. When the director position opened up, I was certain it was finally my time. Julian had been promoted to COO. My performance reviews were stellar. I'd trained half the department. There was no logical reason to pass me over again, except they did. For Clara Ellison, with her 15 years of experience at our biggest competitor, she's bringing client relationships. Maeve Magijan from HR explained during my mandatory feedback session after the decision, and her previous role gives her insight into the competitive landscape. And my 7 years here means nothing. I asked, my voice quiet. Of course it does. That's why we're giving you a raise and the new title of senior manager. It comes with additional responsibilities but not additional authority. I finished for her. Imagine had the decency to look uncomfortable. Career growth isn't always linear. Maeve. That was the day before the celebration party. The day before I stood in that conference room drinking cheap champagne, watching them celebrate my failure. Now, here's where most people would quit, right? Storm out dramatically, maybe send a scathing email to the entire company about their unfair treatment. Some would cry in the bathroom, then update their resume and quietly slip away to another corporate prison. Not me, because I had ARA. And over 4 years, it had evolved into something that wasn't just good, it was revolutionary. I'd created predictive algorithms that could analyze consumer behavior patterns with 97% accuracy compared to the industry standard of around 62%. My system could identify market trends months before they emerged. It could pinpoint exactly which customers were about to leave a service and why, allowing for targeted intervention. In other words, I'd built something worth millions while being paid $82,000 a year to do someone else's work. That night, after Clara's celebration, I went home and made a decision. I was done being the reliable, grateful Maeve who accepted whatever scraps they threw my way. I pulled out a notebook and wrote down everything I knew about our company's clients, our internal systems, and most importantly, our weaknesses. 7 years of institutional knowledge gives you a lot of ammunition if you choose to use it. The next morning, I walked into the office with a different energy. Julian noticed immediately. "You okay?" he asked, genuinely confused by my calm demeanor. He'd expected tears or resignation, or at least some passive-aggressive comments. "Never better," I replied with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Just excited about our new direction." For the next 3 months, I was the perfect employee. I came in early to help Clara transition into her role. I stayed late to finish projects. I volunteered for the most tedious tasks without complaint. What no one knew was that every moment I spent there was strategic. Every late night gave me access to information I needed. Every tedious task provided cover for what I was really doing, preparing. I set up meetings with clients under the guise of relationship maintenance. I conducted system tests that were actually me identifying every vulnerability in our infrastructure. I documented processes claiming it was for training purposes. And at night, I finalized Aura, preparing it for its debut. I also reached out to Tyrell Mercer. Remember him? The assistant director who left years ago? He'd started his own consulting firm that had grown into a respectable mid-sized competitor. We'd kept in touch casually over the years, grabbing coffee every few months. I might be looking to make a change, I told him during one of our coffee dates. Finally, he said with a knowing smile, "I've been waiting for you to realize your worth for years. I'm not just looking for a job," I clarified. "I've built something that could change everything about how we approach predictive analytics." His eyes lit up with interest. "Show me." I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I asked him about his investors, his client contracts, his infrastructure. I needed to know if his company was the right vehicle for what I had planned. It wasn't just about leaving my company. It wasn't even about success. I wanted Julian, Clara, Magijan, all of them to understand exactly what they had thrown away. "You've changed," my friend Lena said to me one night over dinner. She'd known me since college, had witnessed every disappointment. "There's something different in your odds." "I'm just tired of being underestimated," I replied, pushing my food around my plate. No, she said, studying my face. This is more than that. You're planning something. I smiled at her. I'm just finally prioritizing myself. 2 weeks before I was ready to make my move, Clara called me into her office, my former almost office. She'd redecorated, of course. The walls were now a creative mint green instead of the standard beige. Motivational quotes and expensive frames hung everywhere. Maeve, she said warmly, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. I wanted to check in. You've been so helpful with the transition, but I'm worried you're burning yourself out. I'm fine, I assured her. Just doing my job. That's just it. She leaned forward, concern etched on her face. You're doing more than your job. You're doing parts of my job, parts of the analyst's jobs. It's not sustainable. I felt a flicker of anger. Was she accusing me of overstepping after I'd spent months making her look good? I'm just trying to be valuable to the company, I said carefully. Clara sighed. Look, I know this has been difficult getting passed over for a position you wanted. Deserved. I corrected before I could stop myself. Her expression shifted. There it was. The flash of insecurity I'd been waiting for. Clara knew she hadn't earned this role over me. She knew it had been handed to her because of who she knew, where she'd worked before, the clients she could potentially bring. Maeve, she said softly, I hope we can move past this. I value you enormously. In fact, I've been talking to Julian about creating an assistant director position specifically for you. It would mean a substantial raise, and I stood up so abruptly that she stopped mid-sentence. Thank you for your concern, I said, my voice tight. But I don't need your advocacy. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting with the Grayson account in 5 minutes. I didn't have a meeting. What I had was a realization. They were finally scared of losing me, not because they valued me, but because after 3 months of my strategic helpfulness, they'd realized how much I actually did, how much knowledge would walk out the door with me. It was time. That weekend, I finalized my agreement with Tyrell. His company would provide the infrastructure and client base for AUR's launch, with me coming on as a partner, not an employee, a partner with a 40% equity stake in the new venture. I also sent emails to 3 of our biggest clients, people I'd built relationships with over 7 years, people who trusted my expertise above anyone else's at the company. I didn't explicitly ask them to move their business. I simply told them I was making a change and would love to have coffee before my departure. All 3 immediately agreed to meet. On Monday morning, I arrived at the office at my usual early time, 7:15. The cleaning staff was still there and most of the lights were still off. Perfect. I went to my desk, powered up my computer, and began the process that would end my career at the company I had dedicated 7 years to and begin something entirely new. First, I submitted my resignation letter by email to Julian Imadijan in Human Resources, and yes, Clara. It was brief, professional, and included the standard 2 weeks' notice. Nothing that would raise any immediate alarms. Then I systematically began removing all traces of Aura from the company's servers. Not that there was much there. I had been careful to develop it primarily on my personal equipment, but I needed to ensure that nothing remained which they could claim ownership of. As I worked, I felt strangely calm. This wasn't a rash decision made in anger. This was the culmination of 4 years of planning, building, and preparing for this exact moment. I ate. People started filtering in. I smiled, made small talk, acted as if it were just another Monday. I was curious how long it would take for the news to spread. At 17 minutes past 9, my phone rang. Julian, my office now. I took my time walking to his office. 7 years of jumping every time Julian called. And now I strolled through the hallway, even stopping to refill my coffee mug. When I finally pushed open his door, a mime from HR was already there along with Clara and Reynolds from legal. Interesting. They'd called in the lawyer already. Close the door, Julian said. His face was flushed, that familiar vein in his forehead pulsing the way it did when a client threatened to leave. I sat down, placed my coffee on his desk without a coaster, and waited. What is this? He held up his phone, displaying my resignation email. I believe the subject line makes it clear. It's my 2 weeks' notice. Reynolds cleared his throat. Maeve, perhaps we should discuss your employment contract and the non-compete clause you signed when you joined the company. I smiled at him. I'm familiar with it. I can't work for a direct competitor for 1 year after leaving. I have no intention of violating that agreement. Then, what exactly are your plans? Clara asked, her voice gentler than the others. I'm joining a consulting firm, I replied truthfully. They work primarily in a different sector. Which firm? Julian demanded. I don't think I'm obligated to share that information. Imagine leaned forward. We are concerned about this sudden decision. If there's something we can address, some way we can make things right. You mean like the assistant director position Clara mentioned creating for me? I raised an eyebrow, another empty promise to keep me in place. Julian's expression darkened. We've been more than fair to you. We've rewarded your work appropriately. If you felt otherwise, you should have said something. I actually laughed. I did. For years, during every performance review, every time I was passed over, I said something and you all chose not to listen. This is business, not personal, Julian snapped. We made decisions based on what was best for the company. And now I'm making a decision based on what's best for me. I stood up. I'll complete my 2 weeks as stated. I'll document all my processes and help transition my responsibilities. Then I'll be gone. Sit down, Julian ordered. We are not finished. For the first time in 7 years, I didn't obey. Actually, I think we are, I said, walking to the door. I have the Westlake presentation to finish, unless you'd prefer I stop working immediately. They couldn't afford that. We all knew it. Tomorrow morning, Reynolds said quickly, 9:00 a.m. We'll need to discuss the details of your transition and review your contractual obligations. I nodded and left, feeling their eyes burning into my back. The rest of the day was delicious chaos. Word spread quickly. Colleagues stopped by my desk with confused expressions and awkward questions. Some seemed genuinely sad. Others could barely hide their opportunistic glee. My departure meant potential advancement for them. By late afternoon, my phone was buzzing with texts from the 3 clients I'd emailed. All had agreed to meet that week. Perfect. After everyone left, I stayed late as usual. But this time, I wasn't working on company projects. I was preparing for my meetings, gathering data that would demonstrate exactly why they should follow me to Tyrell's firm. Was it stealing clients? Technically, no. I wasn't taking company data or proprietary information. I was simply leveraging relationships I'd built, knowledge I'd gained, and trust I'd earned. There was nothing in my contract preventing clients from choosing to take their business elsewhere after I left. The next morning, I arrived at the office with a small cardboard box. What's that for? Asked Phoebe, the receptionist. Just getting a head start on organizing my things, I replied. Her eyes widened. So it's true. You're really leaving? 2 weeks, I confirmed. She looked genuinely sad. It won't be the same without you. That almost made me falter. Phoebe had always been kind, had nothing to do with the decisions that had held me back. There would be collateral damage in what I was about to do. People like her who might suffer consequences. But then I remembered that cake, that humiliating toast, 7 years of broken promises. I hardened my resolve. A meeting with legal was exactly what I expected. They reminded me of all my obligations under the non-compete and confidentiality agreements. They warned me about soliciting clients or employees. They made vague threats about litigation if I violated any terms. I nodded politely through all of it. Is there anything else? Reynolds exchanged glances with Imadigen. We'll need you to sign this additional document confirming your understanding of these obligations. I read it carefully, immediately spotting the new language they'd slipped in. This goes beyond my original agreement. It restricts me from working in the entire analytics field, not just with direct competitors. It's a standard exit clarification, Reynolds said smoothly. I'm not signing this. I pushed the paper back across the table. My original contract stands, nothing more. Imagine began. No, I cut her off. You can walk me out right now if you insist on this. Otherwise, I'll complete my 2 weeks under the terms of my existing agreements. They backed down. They needed those 2 weeks too badly. That afternoon, I had coffee with Julian Westlake, CEO of our second largest client. We'd always had a good rapport. I'd saved his company millions by identifying a pattern of customer churn they hadn't noticed. "I was surprised to get your email," he said after we exchanged pleasantries. "You've always seemed so dedicated to your company." 7 years, I confirmed. "But it's time for something new, something better." "And what might that be?" I took a sip of my coffee, choosing my words carefully. "I've been developing a new approach to predictive analytics, something that goes beyond what's currently available in the market." His interest was immediate. "Go on." "The firm I'm joining is preparing to launch this technology. It can predict consumer behavior with unprecedented accuracy. Not just what customers will do, but why they'll do it, allowing for intervention at exactly the right moment." "That sounds ambitious." I pulled out my tablet and showed him a demonstration using anonymized data. His eyes widened as he watched the interface predict behavioral patterns with 97% accuracy. "This is real, not just a concept." "Very real," I assured him, "and going to market within the month." He sat down his coffee cup. "Maeve, we've invested heavily in your current company's solution. We've built our entire customer retention strategy around it." "I know. And you've seen a 23% improvement in retention. Imagine what you could do with a system 4 times more accurate." By the end of our meeting, Julian hadn't committed to anything explicitly. He couldn't. Not without seeing more. Not without proper procurement procedures. But I saw the hunger in his eyes. He wanted what I had built. "Keep me updated on your launch date," he said as we parted. The next day was my meeting with Eliza Chen, whose company spent even more with us than Julian's did. The day after that, I met with Tamars Rivera, who controlled our largest account. Both meetings followed similar patterns. Careful questions, demonstrations of Eura's capabilities without revealing its full potential, and no direct solicitation, just making sure they knew what would soon be available elsewhere. Meanwhile, at the office things were getting tense. Julian had assigned Clara to shadow me, ostensibly to learn my processes, but really to monitor what I was doing. I didn't mind. There was nothing for her to see. My real work was happening outside the building. On Friday morning, 1 week into my 2-week notice period, Julian called another meeting. This time, the company's CEO, Vincent Hargrove, was present, a man I'd only interacted with a handful of times over 7 years. "Maeve," Vincent began, his tone surprisingly warm, "I understand you've decided to leave us." "Yes, sir. I have to say I was disappointed to hear it. Your contributions have been significant." I waited. There was more coming. "Julian tells me you've been with us for 7 years. Started right out of grad school, correct?" "That's right. And in that time, you've developed quite a reputation for problem solving and innovation." Vincent leaned forward, which makes me curious about something. "Have you been developing any proprietary systems or methodologies while employed here?" And there it was. Someone had connected the dots, or at least suspected something. "I've contributed to many company initiatives," I replied carefully. "That's not what I asked," Vincent said, his warmth fading slightly. "Have you developed any systems independently using company time or resources?" "I've always fulfilled my assigned responsibilities," I said. "Anything beyond that was done on my own time with my own resources." Reynolds jumped in. "Your employment agreement clearly states that any intellectual property developed during your employment period, regardless of when or where the work was done, belongs to the company if it relates to our business." I smiled. "I'm familiar with that clause. It's standard in the industry." "Then you understand our concern," Vincent said. "If you've developed something of value while employed here, it legally belongs to this company." I reached into my bag and pulled out a document, sliding it across the table to Reynolds. "This might address your concerns." It was a patent application filed 3 years earlier for a system and method for adaptive predictive analytics in consumer behavior forecasting. My patent application filed in my name long before anyone at the company had any idea what I was building. Reynolds scanned it, his expression darkening. "This should have been disclosed to the company." "There was nothing to disclose," I replied. "It was a personal project unrelated to my assigned work here. I used no company data, no company resources. I worked on my own equipment during my personal time." The subject matter clearly relates to our business, Julian argued. It relates to the field I work in, I corrected. But it wasn't developed for this company, nor did it use any proprietary company methodologies. Vincent studied me with new interest. You've been planning this for a long time, haven't you? I met his gaze steadily. I've been developing my skills and protecting my intellectual property as any professional would. The meeting ended in a stalemate. They couldn't prove I'd used company resources or time. The patent application, while not yet approved, established a paper trail showing I'd been developing or independently for years. As I walked out, Vincent called after me. Maeve, a word in private. I followed him to his office, curious. Once the door closed, he gestured for me to sit. I underestimated you. We all did. I said nothing. What would it take to keep you and this system you've developed? He asked bluntly. It's not for sale. Everything's for sale at the right price. He named a figure that would have made me gasp a year ago. I shook my head. I'm not interested. Double that then of the director position you wanted. Clara can be moved to another division. For a brief moment, I allowed myself to imagine it. The vindication of finally getting what I deserved. The satisfaction of seeing Clara demoted. The financial security that kind of money would bring. But it would be hollow. Nothing would really change. They still wouldn't respect me. They'd just fear losing what I'd created. Too late, I said simply, standing up. But thank you for confirming something. What's that? That I've been right all along about my value. The following Monday, my final week 3 bombshells dropped in quick succession. First, Julian Westlake called Julian to inform him they would not be renewing their contract when it expired in 60 days. No explanation given. 3 hours later, Eliza Chen's company did the same. By late afternoon, Thomas Rivera had called Vincent directly to inform him that after careful review of available options in the marketplace, they would be transitioning to a new analytics provider. The office erupted into panic. 3 major clients representing nearly 40% of the company's revenue, all giving notice on the same day, and somehow everyone seemed to know I was connected to it. Clara burst into my cubicle, her face flushed. What did you do? What did you say to them? I had coffee with old friends, I replied calmly. Nothing more. They are all leaving because of you. She accused. They are making business decisions. I corrected, just like this company did when they hired you, instead of promoting me. Julian was next, his approach less confrontational, but more desperate. Maeve, we need to fix this. Whatever you want, name it. The clients trust you. If you stay, they might reconsider. I doubt it, I said truthfully. They've seen something better. His eyes narrowed. Their system. That's what you showed them. I shrugged. I showed them a demonstration of advanced analytics capabilities that will soon be available. That's client solicitation. It violates your contract. Check the meeting records, Julian. All 3 reached out to me after learning I was leaving. I didn't contact them first, and I never asked them to leave. They made that decision independently after seeing what's possible in the marketplace. Technically true. Carefully, deliberately true. By Wednesday, the stock price had begun to fall as rumors of the client departures leaked to the market. Analysts were questioning the company's ability to retain key accounts. Thursday morning, I arrived to find Vincent waiting at my desk. You've destroyed 7 years of client relationships in a week, he said quietly. No, I corrected him. I built those relationships over 7 years. The company took them for granted, just like they took me for granted. We'll sue you, you know, for everything you've got. On what grounds? I've violated no agreements. I've taken no company data. I've solicited no clients. I've simply accepted a new position and shown some interested parties a technology I developed independently. You know exactly what you've done, he said, anger finally breaking through his corporate veneer. Yes, I agreed. I finally valued myself correctly, something this company never managed to do. Friday was my last day. I arrived to find a security guard waiting to escort me to my desk, where I was permitted to collect my personal items before being walked out. Standard procedure for high-risk departures, Imagine explained awkwardly. As I packed my few belongings, colleagues watched from a distance, some sympathetic, others wary as if my career implosion might be contagious. Julian didn't show his face. Clara hid in her office. But as I walked toward the elevator with my small box of possessions, Vincent stepped out of a conference room. "You won't succeed, you know," he said quietly. "You've made powerful enemies. Word will spread about what you did here." I smiled at him. "What exactly did I do, Vincent?" "Built something innovative on my own time. Valued my work appropriately when others wouldn't. Left for a better opportunity. Isn't that exactly what we are all told to do in business?" The elevator doors open. "You know what the difference is between me and everyone who runs this company?" I asked him. "I was willing to lose everything to get what I deserved. You were only willing to pay what you thought I was worth, not what I actually am worth. That was your mistake." The doors closed on his stunned face. 3 months later, Oral launched through Tyro's company, now our company. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The same week, my patent was finally approved, cementing my ownership of the core technology. 6 months later, we had signed 5 major clients, including the 3 that had left my former employer. Our valuation hit $40 million after a successful funding round. 1 year later, my former company's stock had dropped 62%. They'd lost 11 more major clients. Clara had been let go in the 3rd round of layoffs. Julian had been forced to resign after a disastrous quarterly earnings call. Vincent held on the longest, but eventually the board replaced him, too. I didn't feel the satisfaction I'd expected. There was no moment of pure vindication, no perfect scene where everyone admitted they'd been wrong about me. Instead, there was something better, the quiet confidence of knowing I'd been right to believe in myself, the freedom of building something on my own terms, the profound relief of never having to prove my worth to people who were determined to undervalue me. 2 years after I walked out with that small box of desk items, a business magazine put me on their 40 under 40 list. The photo shoot took place in our new offices, a beautiful open space with walls of windows and no beige anywhere to be seen. The interviewer asked if I had any regrets about my departure from my previous company, only that I didn't leave sooner. I answered honestly. I stayed 7 years in a place that showed me repeatedly they didn't value me. My only regret is not believing in myself enough to walk away the first time they passed me over. "Do you feel you got revenge?" she asked. I considered the question carefully. "I didn't destroy them," I said finally. "They destroyed themselves by creating a culture where loyalty meant nothing and innovation was only valued when it came from outside. I just stopped protecting them from the consequences of their own decisions." Last week, I received a LinkedIn request from Julian. He's between opportunities now, his profile says. I accepted the connection, but didn't respond to his message asking to meet for coffee to catch up. Some bridges don't need to be rebuilt. So that's my story. Not the one I thought I'd be telling when I joined that company, fresh out of grad school, full of ambition and gratitude, but it's mine and I'm proud of it. If there's one thing I hope you take from this, it's that your worth isn't determined by how others value you. Sometimes the most loyal thing you can do for yourself is to walk away and build something new. If my story resonated with you in any way, please hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you want to hear more about building something from nothing or just navigating the messy reality of professional life. Drop a comment below about a time you had to choose between loyalty and self-worth. I read every single one. And remember, experience does matter, but so does recognizing your own value, especially when no one else will. I invite you to subscribe to the Azad Revenge Stories channel. Like this video and support me further by hitting the hype button so the story in this video can be heard by many more people. Thanks to all.